It's time to talk about Donald Trump, all the former president's attorneys, those that can't control him, and what's happening in terms of his legal jeopardy as a result. I created the Popok Porter board today to talk about all these attorneys one at a time. I'm going to tell you why it matters, both from a defense standpoint, this patchwork quilt of lawyers coming and going, quitting at the most inopportune moments for Donald Trump, and then dumping on him on network television, on cable news on the way out, why it matters, and who's listening. Jack Smith, special prosecutors, there's more than 10 of them at the executive bench that are listening. Fani Willis and her people down in Fulton County, Georgia, who are prosecuting and likely indicting Donald Trump at the end of July. And Alvin Bragg's team of another 10 people, full-time line duty prosecutors going after Donald Trump. Let's talk about the lawyers. Let's talk about their inability to control him. Let's talk about who's in the inner circle left that Donald Trump even has as attorneys and why he's not listening to any of them. No surprise. First of all, he is completely out of control. I think that is an immutable fact we can all agree to. No lawyer can control him. Joe Tacopina, his probably soon to be outgoing criminal defense lawyer because of his poor showing at the E. Jean Carroll case, in which Donald Trump was found to be a sexual abuser and defamer, and he lost $5 million. So write that down. Joe Tacopina likely going out of the orbit of Donald Trump. Even he told the federal judge, "I can't control my client, Your Honor. You know what I'm dealing with here, sir." That's on the record by Joe Tacopina. So you have this dwindling bench of lawyers that are willing and able to represent Donald Trump. He doesn't respect or listen to any of them. And I'm going to go through why that matters, because in order to both put on some defense and to interface with the prosecutors and the attorney generals to try to resolve matters, Donald Trump is making it almost impossible because he doesn't have any credible lawyers left. And even the ones that he has left that used to have credibility, they're all in shreds because of things that the client is making them do that make them look ridiculous and lose their reservoir of goodwill with the other side. I've been doing this for a long time, over 30 years. You have to have a counterparty on the other side, whether it be your prosecutor, your investigator, your lawyer on the other side. You have to have credibility or you can't get a resolution for your client that makes sense. And Donald Trump has made that virtually impossible. Let's go through all the presidents or former presidents' lawyers and talk about where they are on my Popok Porter board. We got Trump attorneys, Parlatore, Tim Parlatore, and Corcoran. They used to be the lead lawyers for Mar-a-Lago. They are no more. They have both departed right at the end of the Mar-a-Lago investigation and likely indictment. We've got their departure. Let me tell you, as a 32-year practicing lawyer, that's not a good sign for the client when your two lead lawyers quit you. One, Corcoran, had to quit because a federal judge found that he participated, or at least his client did, in a likely crime or fraud related to the Mar-a-Lago documents when the judge stripped Corcoran of his attorney-client privilege and forced him to testify several months ago before the grand jury and turn over pages and pages of handwritten notes that used to be private and confidential about his client that are now in the hands of one Jack Smith and his prosecutor team. So take Parlatore and Corcoran off the board. Joe Tacopina just lost a $5 million case in which Donald Trump was found to be a sex abuser and a defamer by a jury of his peers, 9 people, 6 men, 3 women in New York. I will venture to guess, I will hazard to guess that Joe Tacopina is no longer in the inner circle of Donald Trump, nor has his trust. And how do I know that? Because he used to be on the criminal defense team for Donald Trump in the new 34-count criminal indictment by the Manhattan DA's office of Donald Trump for business fraud, for business records fraud related to Stormy Daniels. And at the most recent hearing just a few days ago, Joe Tacopina wasn't in the room. Todd Blanche was in the room. You can see him up on my column here. Susan Necklace was in the room, but Joe Tacopina wasn't. I suspect he has now been relegated to the kiddie table for all things Donald Trump and criminal defense. Speaking of kitty table, let's turn to Alina Habba. Now Trump keeps trotting her out on, different cable news networks, but in the courtroom, I've done more than she has in the courtroom for Donald Trump, and I haven't done a darn thing. She did nothing at the E. Jean Carroll trial. Not a witness, not an opening statement, not a closing argument. She didn't argue a motion. She didn't do anything. She just sat there next to all the men defending him and let the case go forward, and a loss. So Alina Habba, who's already gotten Donald Trump in trouble, up to $1 million of fines by a federal judge in Florida, if she hasn't figured it out yet, she's dead man walking. She's Weekend at Bernie's. She's barely hanging on in that orbit. Susan Neckles did appear in last week's hearing, lead criminal defense lawyer allegedly for Donald Trump and all things that matter, but she's also got tagged with a 17-count conviction against major Trump organizations for tax fraud. So, I think she's on the way out of the orbit. And then Giuliani lost his license in 2 different places and is the target of a criminal investigation. He's not on good terms with Trump. Jenna Ellis is continuing to dodge giving a deposition in a defamation case related to Donald Trump, and she hasn't been heard of, and she had her law license whacked by her state regulator. Sidney Powell, you haven't heard from Sidney Powell in a while because she's also the target of criminal investigations, and she's likely to lose her law license one day from the state of Texas, leaving only 4 lawyers left. 4 lawyers left that maybe are able to talk to Donald Trump and talk some sense into him, but I doubt it. Todd Blanche, Jim Trusty, Mr. Keiss, and John Rowley. Let's talk about each of them now. Blanche is the lawyer so far that seems to be the lead prosecutor for things related to the Stormy Daniels Manhattan DA. Does he have a rapport with the Manhattan DA's office? Maybe. He's a well-respected lawyer. So far, it seems like he's on the good side of Donald Trump, but he's not able to control him. He's not able to stop him from going to rallies and saying things that end up being evidence against him in all the cases that are pending and all the prosecutions that are pending. Chris Keiss hasn't been heard of since he took his $5 million of payments from Donald Trump's Save America PAC. He shows up occasionally in New York. He's a Florida lawyer. They're not letting him do anything else. He's been backbenched by Donald Trump and doesn't seem to be in the inner sanctum any longer. Then you've got Jim Trusty, who we predicted on Legal AF a long time ago would be sort of the lead consigliere for Donald Trump for things related to Jack Smith, because Jack Smith and Jim Trusty used to be buddies and worked together in the U.S. Attorney's Office, running different bureaus and divisions. But Jim Trusty has drunk the Kool-Aid and is now sending, along with John Rowley, sending crazy letters addressed to Merrick Garland, obviously dictated by their client Donald Trump, talking about Hunter Biden and his laptop, in a 3-line letter. Please, can we have a meeting with you to talk about this unprecedented investigation of a president? And why aren't you looking at Hunter Biden and Joe Biden? I mean, that's the letter they write. When Merrick Garland got that, when he was done laughing, he probably said to himself, first of all, I'm the wrong person to write to. There is a special counsel. His name is Jack Smith. You should be writing to Jack Smith. He's running the investigation, not me. I appointed a special counsel. Secondly, if Jim Trusty ever had any credibility with Jack Smith, he just lost it all because he looks like a complete puppet, like Donald Trump has his hand up Trusty's backside and making his mouth move. And that's no way if you're a future criminal defendant, which Donald Trump is. Let me just say this one last time. Donald Trump was already indicted by Manhattan DA. He will be indicted by Fani Willis in Georgia for election interference related to the phone calls, not just the phone call he made to Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, to try to find 11,700 votes, but also all the phone calls he made to the Speaker of the House in Georgia, to officials of the Republican Party of Georgia, many of which are now cooperating, the fake electors, with Fani Willis. So he's going to get indicted there. He's going to get indicted in one or more grand juries led by Jack Smith and his team of top 10 prosecutors. Okay? They're not putting in all this effort to strip attorney-client privilege away from lawyers, to strip executive privilege from every member of the inner circle in the White House, in the West Wing, of consultants, of advisors of Donald Trump. They're not doing all of that and going through all that effort and breaking all these eggs in order not to ultimately indict Donald Trump. This is a prosecutor that's making sure every I is dotted, every T is crossed before he goes for the indictment, because once he goes for the indictment, the whole world changes, and he's now indicted a former president at the federal level, which has never been done. Another first for Donald Trump, being indicted at the federal level. He's already been indicted at the state level. So that's going to, so we're going to have those three. So who among these lawyers on this list that I just gave you, the ones that are left, who's left to talk to Jack Smith, Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, and Fani Willis in Florida? Okay, so if I was a betting man, I think Trusty is kind of looking for the exit, if you will. Chris Kice, we haven't seen hide nor hair of him in a long, long time. Rowley just wrote a letter on his letterhead to Merrick Garland, abusing Merrick Garland and then begging for a meeting. And then you got Todd Blanche, who on criminal matters seems to be holding his own. So if I had to guess, it's going to be some combination of maybe Blanche and Rowley that's going to continue to represent Donald Trump while they trot somebody like Alina Habba out to run their interference, right? And try to take the heat off of Donald Trump and continue to, promote his talking points for his rallies and keep him relevant as he runs for the Republican nomination. But none of them can control him. And you've seen the byproduct of that every time Donald Trump goes to a rally, gives an interview, or does something on social media. And I can tell you as a practicing lawyer, when I got an out-of-control client, I quit the case. I've had it happen a couple times in my career, and I'm out of the case. Here, I mean, there are people that are quitting. Tim Parlatore likely quit, if his interview is to be believed, because he's getting, there was interference between him and his client by people like, here's a lawyer we haven't talked about on this hot take, Boris Epshteyn. Boris Epshteyn, who's if you want to go back and take a look at a photo of when Donald Trump was arraigned in New York, he was the guy in the balding guy in the three-piece suit sweating. That Boris Epshteyn, who's been, sort of a secret puppet master for Donald Trump and things legal for a long, long time, a practicing lawyer himself. The FBI has him right in their crosshairs. They already got a search warrant and picked up his phone, and he could likely be a witness against Donald Trump one day or indicted himself. But for right now, he's bringing in people like Todd Blanche to run the criminal side. He's continuing, it looks like, to be in the good graces of Donald Trump. But Tim Parlatore on the way out said, Boris Epshteyn is interfering with my ability to be a lawyer for Donald Trump. I wanted to go find all the documents at Mar-a-Lago and Bedminster, and Boris Epshteyn got in the way of that. And Boris Epshteyn doesn't tell the truth. He doesn't tell the truth to the lawyers for Donald Trump, and he doesn't tell the truth to his client. This is Tim Parlatore on the way out of being a lawyer for Donald Trump, revealing attorney-client privilege on CNN as he departs. Evan Corcoran hasn't been heard of because he's a potential target of criminal investigation related to Mar-a-Lago as well. So those two lawyers, for the indictment that is most likely to come down in the next couple of weeks, Mar-a-Lago, those two lead lawyers are gone and they've yet to be replaced. Although it looks like Jim Trusty and Rowley are trying to serve that role of running interference, because they sent the 4-line letter to Merrick Garland saying, hey, let's have a meeting. Things are really, spiraling out of control. And by the way, Hunter Biden, which is apparently what their defense is. Now, look, this might get you, Donald Trump, talking to you now, this might get you the Republican nomination. We can only hope you get the Republican nomination. Twice impeached, multiply indicted state and federally, and a judged sexual abuser and defamer by a jury in New York. Go ahead. Good luck with independents, women, and other people that use their eyes and ears and brain to vote. But this might get you your nomination. It's not going to win you national office, and it's certainly not going to be a defense that you can use in criminal court to either try to get prosecutors to turn off the heat and work out a deal with them. Not happening. Or, to try to get settlements, or on the civil side, same thing with Letitia James, New York Attorney General. So he is hurtling down a road where the bridge is out ahead, and he's doing nothing to avert it, to make him go right over it. I mean, he's just Donald Trump, based on his conduct with his lawyers and what he says when they can't control him, is just effectively buying criminal trials for himself and indictments. And, continuing to think that if he can just win the presidency, somehow on the federal side, he'll give himself immunity, which of course would be historic and never done before. But that doesn't help him on the state side at all. New York is run by Democratic governors. He's not going to get a pardon in New York for anything that happens in the New York prosecutions. Georgia has a Republican governor, but that's not how pardons work in Georgia. There's a board, because they had a lot of corrupt governors in Georgia, so they don't let them sell pardons or give out pardons. And so it's done by a board, which is less likely to give one to Donald Trump. And so when you don't have lawyers that protect you, that you trust, that you listen to, then you just buy yourself criminal and civil trials over and over and over again, the very definition of insanity. I'm going to keep watching these chapters of insanity by Donald Trump only on the Midas Touch Network in hot takes just like this one. I do about every day, if not more, depending upon what's going on at the intersection of law and politics where I sit. And then every Wednesday and Saturday, we curate on the Midas Touch Network on a podcast that I co-founded and co-anchor called Legal AF. I do it on Wednesdays with Karen Friedman Agnifilo. I do it on Saturdays with one of the founders of Midas Touch, Ben Meiselas. You can pick it up on Midas Touch Network on this YouTube channel. You can subscribe. It's free. You can listen to us wherever you get podcasts from. And if you like what I'm doing, give me a thumbs up on this YouTube video. Write a comment. I'll take a look. I'll write back. And follow me at all things social media at MS Popok. This is Michael Popok, Legal AF reporting.
Hey, Midas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at Midas Touch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.